Justin, would you ever donate an organ?
Sure, if it was for a family member.
Well, our school superintendent faced that decision. It was a matter of life and death. Kara Constantine reports.
Dr. Vincent N. Varcadipane is known in Totowa as the superintendent of schools, but to his family, he is better recognized as a lifesaver because his sacrifice saved the life of his wife and mother of his 2 children.
Unfortunately, I had a stroke, and in the hospital, after running tests, they told me that the kidney function was low and I would need a kidney transplant within 2 years.
Mrs. Varcadipane says she felt fine before the stroke, but she did already suffer from hypertension and diabetes, which is the cause of kidney failure in about 1/3 of transplant patients. But she had never faced a challenge like this. The news was quite emotional, and she thought about her family.
The doctor came in the hospital room, told me, and I cried. Shocked, upset. That's the worst. As a mother, you feel what's going to happen with your kids.
Dr. Michael Shapiro is the chief of transplant surgery at Hackensack University Medical Center. He is also a medical director for the New Jersey Organ and Tissue Sharing Network, and he sits on the ethics committee of the National Organ Procurement and Transplant Network, also known as UNOS. Dr. Shapiro knows better than anybody that not every person who needs an organ will live to get it.
We have over 100,000 people in the United States waiting for one organ or another. The vast majority of those, about 78,000, are waiting for kidneys. To a certain extent, we're victims of our own success in that as transplantation has become more successful over time, there are more people who are suitable as recipients for transplants and more people who are interested in transplants. And so the waiting list has grown at a much more rapid rate than the number of available organ donors. In addition, society has done a lot of very good things that have, to a certain extent, limited our potential for organ donation, and that is not something that I'm certainly unhappy about. But we've passed helmet laws, we've passed seatbelt laws, we've lowered the blood alcohol level that makes one a drunk driver. We have many fewer young, healthy people who are dying in a way that would make them suitable organ donors. That's a very good thing. At the same time, to have someone who dies in a way that they could become an organ donor and then have them not donate just takes a terrible, tragic event and makes it more terrible and more tragic.
In the case of Mrs. Varcadipane, without a kidney transplant, she would have stayed on dialysis.
Dialysis is not a good long-term solution for patients with diabetes in particular. Survival for diabetics on dialysis in the long term is not very good.
And with that grim prospect looming over her head, Mrs. Varcadipane's days were numbered unless she found a solution. Enter Dr. Varcadipane, who recalls the first time he saw his future wife.
The first time I met or saw her was in freshman Spanish class at Passaic Valley High School. And I looked at her and I said, believe it or not, I said, I don't like her and I'll probably end up marrying her someday.
Despite that paradoxical first thought, it would be 4 years before there was love in the air.
Well, I don't think I talked to her again until probably I graduated high school, and it was the fall of freshman year in college, and we were playing pickup football games at the high school, and I guess she just started hanging around, and we just got to be friendly.
I knew he was going to be there. It was, like I said, we had mutual friends. So, in high school, a bunch of girls go watch a bunch of boys. I wasn't your best driver. And when we were leaving the parking lot, he stopped and I almost hit him. I didn't hit him.
Disaster averted. They married and had 2 children. And Dr. Varcadipane stepped up when he was needed.
I felt because, I was the father and the husband, it was my role and it was my responsibility to do it. So I never really gave it a second thought, to be honest with you.
I just knew that's the type of guy he would be, that he would do it.
Good thing, because according to Dr. Shapiro, the wait for a kidney in New Jersey is 4 to 5 years depending on blood type. Nationally, 1 patient dies every 17 minutes while on the waiting list.
And that's a long time to wait, especially if you have diabetes. If you cross the river into New York, the waiting time is almost twice as long, and people don't survive that long waiting for a kidney.
And in fact, half of patients with diabetes who need a transplant die waiting. Recipients, on the other hand, can expect to live an extra 5 to 10 years. That's a median number. Not only does the patient benefit, but so does society.
Patients have more energy, they think more clearly, they don't have to watch their diet and their fluid intake nearly as much, they don't have to spend 12 hours a week in a dialysis unit, and most of them just, their mood is better, there's less depression. I think in general people just have an overall better quality of life. It's significantly less expensive. The cost of the first year of the transplant, including the operation and the anti-rejection medicines and all those follow-up visits, is about equivalent to a year and a half or 2 years of dialysis. And so once you get 2 years out from your transplant, you've broken even. And so it's not only less expensive for the patient, but it's less expensive for the insurance company or the government or whoever's paying for the dialysis.
Patients, of course, benefit from the transplant, but as Dr. Shapiro explains, there are many misconceptions.
There are a number of myths and concerns that people who don't sign cards have. Some people just don't believe in donation and never will believe in donation, and that, of course, is their right. At the same time, there are folks who believe that if they sign a donor card, the doctors won't try as hard to save them, and that's ludicrous. Clearly, the doctors and nurses in a trauma center or an emergency room are focused purely on saving someone's life. And donation only becomes an issue when we've tried to save someone and failed. When you do surveys in New Jersey, we find that over 75% of people are willing to be organ donors. But because families don't talk about death and dying and people's wishes, it's very common that a family won't know that their loved one would have wanted to be a donor. And frequently families who are unsure will say no as the default option, when really their loved one, had they talked about it, would have expressed the desire to be a donor.
For Dr. Varcadipane, who is already a cancer survivor, the consequences from donating were relatively mild.
I don't feel any different at all. I do feel, which I never thought would happen, I do feel the incision. And there's days where it feels like if you had a rope tied around your waist tight, you would feel that rope cutting into you. I feel that, but it's not painful, it's just a feeling that's there. And there's also a pretty large numb spot right in the front of my, right in the front, that I guess will never go away. But I guess the other consequence is that I can no longer take Advil. I can no longer take Advil. I can't take muscle relaxers because of the damage it could do to a kidney. So, and ironically, I used to get a lot of headaches, and I used to take Advil all the time. I never would go anywhere without Advil in my briefcase, my golf bag, my guitar case, my desk. I had it all over the place. And now, and ironically, since the kidney donation, I really have very few headaches, if any. And then if I do, I have to take Tylenol.
For Mrs. Varcadipane, thoughts about what she might have missed without the transplant are very emotional.
I guess it's time spent with your family, seeing, you know, like I said, my boys play football. I would have missed all those games. My son just got engaged. A lot of things. It's given people back their lives. It's actually given someone a life back. You know, the memories I have now, I would never have had. And hopefully I have many more.
We also wish many more years of health and happiness for Mrs. Varcadipane.
Indeed, Jonathan. You know, it took us over a year to convince Dr. Varcadipane to let us do this story. We're glad he did. He helped save a teacher's life. Ms. Varcadipane is a language arts teacher for the 1st and 2nd grade in Woodland Park.